The story begins on a crisp autumn afternoon. The golden hues of the fall leaves painted a picturesque scene as John and Sarah embarked on their journey. John, a tall and lanky young man with an adventurous spirit, drives their car along winding country roads. Beside him, Sarah, his girlfriend, radiates with excitement. Her long auburn hair dances in the breeze, and her eyes glisten with anticipation. As they draw closer to their destination, the landscape shifts from small, cozy towns to the serene isolation of the countryside. The road, bordered by towering pine trees, seems to stretch on endlessly. The air is crisp and filled with the earthy scent of pine. John and Sarah's laughter fills the car, echoing the joy of young love. They chat animatedly about their plans and dreams. Both have recently passed their exams and decided to rent a remote cottage in New Jersey as a reward, a taste of the freedom they've earned. Finally, the GPS announces their arrival, guiding them down a narrow gravel road that leads to their secluded cottage. The remote location is evident from the absence of neighbors and the surrounding silence. The cottage, an aging wooden structure, stands alone in a clearing, its shingles bearing the marks of time and weather. Tall, swaying pines encircle it, creating a protective barrier from the outside world. They park the car and the couple steps out, breathing in the pine-scented air. The cottage's charming imperfections draw them in, and John unlocks the door, revealing a cozy interior with a rustic charm. Sunlight filters through the curtains, casting warm, dappled patterns on the wooden floors. The living room contains a comfortable, slightly worn-out sofa facing a fireplace, with a wooden coffee table at its center. The kitchen boasts a vintage cast-iron stove, reminiscent of a bygone era. The promise of a memorable weekend lies ahead, and the two can't help but smile at the adventures to come. John and Sarah settle into the quaint cottage, their footsteps echoing softly in the rustic interior. The soft creaking of the wooden floors underlines the age of the place. Sarah starts unpacking their belongings while John heads to the kitchen, which still carries the faint aroma of previous inhabitants' meals. The couple's first evening is spent cozily by the fireplace. They light a fire, and its warm glow flickers across the room, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The sound of crackling wood provides a comforting backdrop to their conversations and shared dreams. They talk about their college experiences, their hopes for the future, and the life they want to build together. As darkness descends outside, they decide to call it a night. The only sounds in the cottage now are the crackling fire and the occasional gust of wind against the windows. In the stillness, the isolation of their location becomes more pronounced. They retreat to their bedroom, a simple yet charming space with a large old-fashioned wooden bed. The soft rustling of the crisp white sheets contrasts with the ruggedness of the surroundings. The night is serene, filled with the occasional hooting of an owl and the distant murmur of the wind through the pines. John and Sarah drift into dreams of their future together, their peaceful slumber offering a brief respite from the stress of exams and the busyness of everyday life. The morning sun filters through the bedroom window, gently waking John and Sarah from their peaceful slumber. They stretch and yawn, eager to explore the surroundings of their remote retreat. After a simple breakfast, they decide to investigate the basement. The basement door is located in the kitchen, partially hidden behind a dusty, threadbare curtain. Its wooden surface is aged and slightly warped, its handle cool to the touch. As John turns the handle, a sense of anticipation and curiosity fills the room. The door swings open with a low, ominous creak. A narrow wooden staircase leads them downward into the dimly lit basement. The air is damp and chilly, and the faint odor of mildew hangs in the air. The only source of light comes from the dim bulbs strung along the basement ceiling. They descend, their footsteps echoing on the wooden stairs, and as they reach the bottom, their eyes fall upon the shocking sight before them. The basement is larger than expected, and it's filled with an array of old, forgotten items. Dusty crates, moth-eaten books, and broken furniture are scattered about. But what catches their attention most is the mysterious rusted door hidden in the corner. It stands out in stark contrast to the rest of the items, seemingly untouched by time. Chains hang on the walls, covered in thick layers of dust and cobwebs, sending shivers down their spines. John and Sarah exchange nervous glances, hesitating at the threshold of this eerie room. They can't resist the temptation to explore further, their curiosity piqued by the strange, hidden world they've discovered. The door remains locked, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. As John and Sarah stand before the mysterious, rusted door in the dimly lit basement, their hearts race with a mixture of fear and fascination. With trembling hands, John takes a rusted key from a nearby shelf, fitting it into the ancient lock. With a slow, agonizing turn, the lock finally releases, and the door creaks open. A waft of stale, musty air fills their nostrils as they step over the threshold into an unsettling world. The room beyond is chilling and macabre. Chains, encrusted with what appears to be dried blood, dangle ominously from the cracked, peeling walls. The floor is littered with strange, archaic tools and implements that are almost too terrifying to comprehend. The room's walls are covered with dark, disturbing etchings, indecipherable symbols, and cryptic messages, adding an additional layer of foreboding. It becomes clear that this place holds a horrifying secret, one that has remained hidden for far too long. John and Sarah's initial sense of curiosity and wonder turns to dread as they take in the terrifying scene. The realization that they've uncovered something deeply unsettling gnaws at them. The chains, the bloodstains, and the enigmatic symbols paint a picture of past horrors that unfolded within these walls. They exchange horrified glances, their faces pale with fear. The room's oppressive atmosphere seems to close in on them, and they can't shake the feeling of being watched, of being intruders in a place that was meant to remain hidden. The room, with its macabre decor, forms the core of the mystery. It's an ominous foreshadowing of the horrors that will soon plague John and Sarah in this remote cottage. John and Sarah, their nerves frayed and hearts pounding, slowly back away from the unsettling room with the chains and symbols. As they retreat, they hear the distinct sound of footsteps echoing from the basement corridor, growing closer with each passing second. Panic courses through their veins, and they frantically search for a place to hide. The basement offers no refuge, and the dread they feel intensifies as the approaching footsteps become louder and more deliberate. They find themselves pressed against the grimy, blood-stained wall, their eyes darting around the room for any escape route. The chains hanging from the wall seem to taunt them, their rusted hooks glinting ominously in the dim light. The symbols etched on the walls seem to writhe and pulse, as though they hold dark, ancient secrets. The footsteps draw impossibly close, and John and Sarah share a terrified look. Their breaths come in ragged gasps as they prepare for the inevitable confrontation with the unseen intruder. Just as the suspense reaches its peak, a horrifying figure emerges from the corridor. The stranger, shrouded in a menacing leather raincoat, his face concealed behind a grotesque mask made from stitched-together bags, steps into the room. His boots thud ominously against the basement floor. In his gloved hand, he holds a chain with sharp hooks glinting malevolently. It glistens with a dark, viscous substance that can only be dried blood. The chains rattle as he approaches, the room's eerie atmosphere intensifying in his presence. John and Sarah are paralyzed with terror, unable to speak or move. The masked villain stands before them, his hidden gaze seeming to bore into their souls. The air is thick with tension, and the chilling silence is only broken by the sinister sound of his raspy breathing. This encounter is the moment when the horror escalates to its peak as the stranger, with his grotesque appearance and menacing weapon, steps into the scene. The tension is palpable, as John and Sarah find themselves face to face with a nightmarish figure from their worst fears. As the masked evil man looms menacingly over John and Sarah, the atmosphere in the basement becomes almost unbearable. The seconds stretch into eternity as terror holds them in its icy grip. Without warning, the villain lunges, chains with cruel hooks outstretched. John and Sarah snap into action, their adrenaline-fueled instincts taking over. They dart away, narrowly evading the chain's deadly reach, the hooks scraping against the basement floor with a spine-chilling screech. The basement becomes a chaotic battleground, the chains swinging wildly through the air, a deadly dance of steel. John and Sarah's hearts race as they dodge and weave, their fear driving them to the limits of their physical abilities. The evil man's sinister figure seems to be everywhere, his movements uncannily swift and deliberate. The tension continues to mount as they fight for their lives in the confined space. The basement, once a place of mystery and dread, now becomes a nightmarish arena where every corner hides a potential threat. The chains slice through the air with a deadly precision, threatening to ensnare their prey. Despite the odds stacked against them, John and Sarah's love and determination fuel their desperation to escape. They must find a way out, and fast, before the relentless villain catches up to them. The frantic chase continues through the dark and foreboding basement. John and Sarah, their hearts pounding, manage to stay one step ahead of the masked villain. The chains with hooks remain his menacing weapons, always close to ensnaring their fragile bodies. As the chase unfolds, an unexpected detail becomes apparent. The masked villain, while terrifying, exhibits a peculiar vulnerability. He limps, a pronounced and unsettling limp that seems at odds with his relentless pursuit. The limp doesn't make him any less dangerous. In fact, it adds an eerie, otherworldly quality to his presence. It's as if his affliction is a sinister part of his character, a grotesque addition to his menacing appearance. Despite this vulnerability, the villain limping only makes his pursuit more unnerving. He moves with an eerie, almost supernatural grace, his twisted gait lending him an eerie, otherworldly quality. The limp, it seems, is but one layer of his unsettling and enigmatic persona. John and Sarah, unaware of the villain vulnerability, remain focused on escape, their every thought consumed by the urgent need to elude this nightmarish pursuer. The tension remains palpable, even as they begin to grasp the unsettling nature of their foe. The relentless chase continues, each heartbeat echoing in the darkness of the basement. John and Sarah, fueled by sheer terror and determination, narrowly evade the hooks of the villain chains. But as the relentless pursuit reaches a fever pitch, salvation comes from an unexpected source. Just as the villain chains threaten to ensnare John, a figure appears from the shadows. It's John's grandfather, a man whose connection to the cottage has long remained a mystery. His sudden presence brings a glimmer of hope to the dire situation. With a steely resolve, John's grandfather confronts the villain, their shared history hidden in the depths of their strained gazes. The basement becomes a battleground for not only the couple's survival, but also the revelation of a family secret long buried in the past. A fierce, intense confrontation ensues as John's grandfather battles the masked villain, their struggle intensifying with each passing moment. The basement, once a place of dread and chains, now witnesses a generational clash of wills. Just when it appears that all hope is lost, John's grandfather manages to gain the upper hand. With a final, desperate effort, he pushes the villain back, causing him to stumble and falter. John seizes the opportunity to flee with Sarah, and they race to find an escape from the sinister basement, leaving the masked villain and John's grandfather locked in a relentless, final battle. As John and Sarah race away from the basement, the echoes of the ongoing struggle between John's grandfather and the masked villain fade into the distance. Panic still courses through their veins, but they are determined to find a way out of the nightmarish cottage. They reach the ground floor, where the daylight filters in through the windows, offering a welcome contrast to the darkness below. It's then that John explains to Sarah the mystery of his grandfather's involvement. His grandfather was the original owner of the cottage and had shared his concerns about its dark history with John before the trip. The knowledge of this history had led John's grandfather to follow them to the cottage secretly. He had grown increasingly worried about their safety, believing that the cottage held malevolent secrets that could threaten their lives. Together, John and Sarah decide to follow John's grandfather's advice on escaping the house. They remember the map and the notes he had left behind, detailing the layout of the property and a hidden exit. Their escape plan unfolds with a tense urgency. They navigate the creaky floorboards and ancient hallways, discovering hidden passages and crawl spaces that lead them closer to freedom. The sounds of the ongoing struggle between the villain and John's grandfather remain a constant reminder of the danger they're leaving behind. John and Sarah continue to follow John's grandfather's map, discovering a concealed exit from the cottage. The weight of the nightmarish ordeal propels them toward freedom. They make their way to the outskirts of the property, struggling to catch their breaths, the sounds of their own fear and fatigue echoing in their ears. But the tumultuous battle between John's grandfather and the masked villain rages on in the basement. John's grandfather, despite his advanced age, proves to be a formidable adversary. The grim determination in his eyes fuels his every move as he fights to protect his grandson and Sarah. The basement is filled with the cacophony of clashing chains, crashing furniture, and guttural grunts. The villain limp, once a perceived weakness, becomes a strategic advantage, allowing him to maneuver through the chaotic melee with eerie agility. Despite the odds stacked against him, John's grandfather manages to disarm the villain, sending the chains with hooks clattering to the ground. They engage in a harrowing physical struggle, each determined to gain the upper hand. During the final desperate moments of their battle, John's grandfather sustains a grievous wound, his age-worn body pushed to its limits. The villain, fueled by desperation and a twisted desire, manages to grab the chain once more, a cruel smile behind his grotesque mask. But just as it seems that all hope is lost, John's grandfather summons his remaining strength. He launches a powerful, unexpected kick to the villain's chest, sending him sprawling backward, the chain falling from his grasp. The villain, now vulnerable and disarmed, lies defeated on the basement floor. John's grandfather, despite his own injuries, quickly ensures that the villain poses no further threat. The terror that had gripped the basement begins to recede. John and Sarah, having narrowly escaped the clutches of the masked villain, reach the safety of the hidden exit. The nightmarish ordeal in the basement, the relentless pursuit, and the unexpected intervention by John's grandfather have left them shaken to their core. But they can't afford to rest just yet. Outside, they find themselves in a secluded area of the property, far from the looming, ominous cottage. Their surroundings, bathed in the soft light of the setting sun, offer a brief respite from the horrors they've endured. However, their relief is short-lived. The ominous silhouette of the cottage looms behind them, casting a long shadow. The realization dawns that the malevolent presence within the cottage, although defeated for now, remains a threat. Remembering John's grandfather's parting words, they decide to take action. They plan to set the cottage ablaze, severing the connection with the horrors within. With a heavy heart, they return to the cottage, doused in accelerants from a nearby shed. They are determined to finish what they started, to ensure that the malevolent presence remains vanquished. But as they approach the cottage, they are met with an unexpected sight. John's grandfather emerges from the scorched structure, battered and bruised but alive. He had managed to escape the burning cottage just in the nick of time, and his survival is a testament to his strength and resilience. The reunion is filled with relief and tears, but they know that their task is not yet complete. John and Sarah, along with John's grandfather, set fire to the cottage with heavy hearts. The flames lick at the wooden structure, devouring the malevolent secrets within. The cottage becomes a blazing pyre, and its fiery destruction is a visceral act of catharsis, a release from the horror that had gripped them. The fire rages on, consuming the remnants of the malevolent cottage that had been their source of terror. The crackling of flames mingles with the crackling of embers, casting eerie shadows in the darkening evening. John, Sarah, and John's grandfather stand together, watching the inferno with a mixture of relief and melancholy. The cottage, once a place of dread, now turns into a smoldering ruin, a symbolic end to the horrors they had endured. With the destruction of the cottage, they've severed their connection to the malevolent past. But the scars remain, etched into their memories. As they turn away from the dying flames, they know that their lives have been forever changed by the ordeal they faced.